this out for a new bid, we can probably expect, what number did you say?
We've been advised to expect as much as a 10 to 15
Okay.
to even 20, so probably somewhere between a 10 and 20% increase is a possibility.
But only two, if we stay where we're at.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I just want to make sure that's clear.
Yep. And again, we wouldn't be doing a 4-year extension. It would be a 1-year extension. The current contract allows for 3 1-year extensions. So.
Ms. Haddon?
Okay, one thing I'm wondering is if the budget that they have right now is large enough for them to do the job that we want them to do. I wonder if they're just scraping by trying to, pay their employees. So I'm just wondering if the budget's large enough, period, for them to be able to do the
Yeah.
job we want.
That's certainly a good question. And if we decide to go this route, that would be a part of our negotiation and discussion process and negotiating an extension.
What I would add to that, Ms. Haddon, is we went into this contract with them and they bid. They were not the low bid.
Okay.
4 years ago, they were not the low bid. They were about $800,000 more than the lowest bid. And so SSC agreed that they could do this job at the price they bid. So we need, if it's not enough, they should have told us then.
Right, exactly, but I'm just wondering going forward
And
too, I
there-
wonder
I
if
think
that's
what
been
has
an
changed
issue.
from 2020 to today is like a lot.
Right,
Since COVID
inflation
and
and
everything else,
inflation,
things
right.
have just gone up. But, their wages, we were paying, ABM was paying about $13 an hour right at that, at the end of their contract, where, the year before that, it was somewhere 10 and a half, I think. So the wages are up where they need to be. We've got to get the vendor to follow through on what they said they were going to do. And we also, I think some of this came out in the last meeting, we've got to do some better things on our end. And so that's monitoring, it's getting principals to
That's what I'm
report.
wondering too, yes.
We put in the old RFP a system where you're supposed to report deficiencies. We're not getting as many people using that system as they need to be, and so there are a lot of things that we can do better. I tried to go back and find data from AVM, which Ms. Jones and Mr. Smith will remember that, but I actually found a presentation in October of 2020 that was very similar to the presentation you guys got 2 weeks ago from SSC of things just aren't getting any better with ABM back then, right? And we went through this process. I say that to say, my worry in this conversation is that we go out to RFP, we go out and put out a bid, we end up spending more money, and we're gonna get probably similar results. And I think the recommendation, Dr. Sharp's gonna have a recommendation around moving forward that we think we can at least position ourselves better, that if it doesn't improve, we can actually put out an RFP that better serves us and not a similar RFP to what we put out last time.
Okay,
I'll
and
speak-
how soon do we need to make that decision?
Let me speak to that.
Okay.
It's soon. We don't have much time and we've been spending a lot of time thinking about it, right? Working on it, talking to people. We consulted, or we've been in discussions with a third-party group that's their specialty is custodial contracts. And one of the services they offer is to review our existing contract. They know industry standards across the country. They work with these companies. They work contracts with all these different companies. They can help us get that wage right, get the staffing right. But they also bring a monitoring component that would be an additional add to the work we do here. We've built in some internal monitoring pieces, which we're seeing results from. One thing that we noticed about, the whole custodial work in our schools is that, you know, this is a big piece of work, and we've got to step up and do more management from our end. We can't just depend on this vendor to get it all done for us. We gotta hold them accountable. We're doing that now, and it's showing results.
Okay, we're seeing
We, and superintendent's point's correct, if we go the route of an extension, and we're certainly interested in that, we can still, we're back here next year, and if we're not satisfied, we can go the RFP route, but we've got a year experience under our belt. We've got these added layers of accountability, and we've got the potential to have this third-party support to say, all right, we're ready to go, we can do this. You know, they've got a better idea of who we are and what we want. And I think the process would definitely be cleaner a year from now if we end up going that route.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
I want to say, too, I know in other countries, I think I've mentioned this before, when I was in school studying, you know, cultures, what they do, a lot of times the students, you know, are required to help care for the building. And just from being a teacher in the classroom, I think it would help if, you know, they were encouraged to just pick everything up. Because sometimes at the end of the day, the classroom can be a disaster. And if they have to go through some of those classrooms, that's going to slow the job down. So, you know, if people could make sure pencils and trash are picked up and, you know, just try to do our part maybe that way, because, I mean, I think that's the least we could do to try to help that, you know, do our part too.
Oh,
That's what-
I definitely agree. That's would be a big help. And it's you know, you know, instilling some discipline and values that I think are important as well. You know, taking care of our space.
All right. All done, please? All right, Ms. Jones?
I forgot what I was about to say now. I do want to. Huh? It gets worse. I know. This is 43. To add to Ms. Haddon, where I'm bringing my thought back. In theory, that sounds really great to ask our students to do that, but part of the problem is an adult problem, just as everything else is with our children. And I was just leaning over to Mr. Smith to say that we also have to have an accountability to our staff to understand that our custodial services are there to keep our buildings clean and to give them clean working, to give them and our students clean working and learning spaces. But it's also just like at my house, like when I was growing up with my mama, like, I'm not your maid. My name is not Hazel. It's not Florence. I'm not your maid. And so I'm not saying that staff thinks that, but sometimes as you continue to, you've been in one school building, particularly all your life, but if you continue to walk these buildings for the next 4 years, you're gonna see that oftentimes it's not our children that make bad choices in their cleaning habits, but it's also the adults in the spaces that share the spaces with them. So I think it's an accountability piece at all levels, and just wanting to make sure that, I do have a question, this was my question. This Connect, the software, the system, the reporting system. Do all of the staff of Hamilton County Schools and how many buildings we got, y'all? Because we have a new building, 78?
79, 81
78,
buildings,
okay.
I think, but, yeah.
I am curious if the staff, are they aware of Connect? Because Connect will be a whole lot better than Facebook.
Well, yeah.
Because Connect will get it to the people who could answer their questions, not the people that can feed their grape. And once again, going back to the adults that are in our buildings, I think it's very important that they know what that process is, and utilize that process so that it's most effective. You can't complain to a series of millions of people that don't even, they could be Hamilton County, Ohio, because it is the Hamilton County schools in Ohio. That everybody comment on that, and they could be Hamilton County in Barbados, right? Like, get to the root of the problem. Like, if you have a concern, go to your administrator. If you feel like your administrator is not following through, then there is a system. Call what, Dr. Sharp?
Call, Connect, No, well,
Yeah.
each,
So they should be, to me, I'm just kind of like, why is it
Yeah.
that, and I know why, so I'm being facetious here a little bit,
right,
so I know
right,
why,
yeah.
but I just think it's very important, once again, for our adults to be accountable to one another and report the right way. It is not productive. It is, as a matter of fact, it is counterproductive to go to social media, stir up the whole Hamilton County community anonymously, and expect the results that you thought you were gonna get anonymously. When you can report to Connect anonymously, and it go to the two deciding people or bodies that could help you get what you're missing. So I just want to share that. Look, I think that's important for us as board members to hold our step. When people call us, well, did you report it to Connect? Did you report it to your administrator? Did you do these things? But also, once again, making sure that when we have requests of the people that we are getting services from, SSC, for 0.5 people or another person in the building, all of that stuff, to be reasonable and rational in what we're asking, and not expect people to clean up after adults and children. We have to, as a board, make our leaders accountable as well.
Ms. Black, Ms. Haddon, is your light still?
I forget, sorry.
I was just gonna say, the cleanliness of schools is something that is one of the things that I was frequently contacted about, especially on my first year on the board. There were issues. I haven't had as many people reach out recently, so I hope that means that things are improving. But I like the idea of having an extra layer of accountability. Our administrators do so much. There is so much on our principals to keep track of. And continuing to follow up with a contractor who's supposed to be keeping our buildings clean and isn't doing the job that they're supposed to do. And like having to chase down those things it's just an added layer of pressure that our administrators don't need. So I like the idea of having some way where we have like data and an extra layer of accountability that doesn't require extra work from our administrators. And I just want to say, like, I see the value in that.
All right. Then I have a few things to share before we wrap this up and go on. So, 2% increase, can we hold them to that? Or I know the plan is that they will negotiate.
That would be our intention. That we would approach it from that angle, yes.
All right, and if so, we've talked about taking back over the grounds. If we do an extension, do they keep the grounds, or can we still separate the grounds from that?
I think we would continue as is for another year.
All right, all right. And then the service, I'm not going to mention the name of it, but if we went with this third party, and I know they have various levels of contracts, this third party, can they do a contract in which they make a professional recommendation to the board, whether it should be an extension or whether it should be a new RFP?
They won't go that far. They bring information, they bring data, they can inform, but they'll stop short of a recommendation.
Okay, so if we do go with that third party, and that'll be something that the board will have to approve, they would be doing that and getting involved between now and the end of
Yeah, I
the
don't
next
think,
year.
for us to contract with them for services, it wouldn't require board approval. They're on state-approved vendor list.
Oh,
So
okay.
we could approach it from that angle.
Okay,
Probably the way this would play out is, we would bring to you, to the November board meeting, either a recommendation to extend the contract for a year, or the recommendation to put it out to bid.
right.
And we would need to decide at that meeting, because we'll have to start that bid process. We'll be pressed for time at that point, so we'll have to go quick with that.
So if we choose to do the RFP, this company that we're talking about will help write up the new
They'll do that
RFP
as
with
well.
all the
Yeah,
negotiations.
yeah. Costs more money,
But if we choose the extension, we also can get them involved to help monitor it and.
yes, that's a good
Okay.
point. That's a good point. They provide third-party monitoring. They will send in people periodically that don't work for us, don't work for the vendor, and they'll do a third-party assessment.
Right, and then they, at the end of this year of that, they would then have a recommendation.
We'll have a
is what I
full
was-
year's
Right,
worth of
right.
data to support that.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was clear. And, I mean, I don't agree that we should police this company, but I do, I have seen tons of improvements since you and Ben have been doing the walkthroughs. And I really think that was a good step. I know I've asked, when do you think we'll get the Q1 survey results back?
We'll do our best to get a good number back by the end of the week.
Okay.
So we're communicating with principals this week. We'll try to get a good number back by the end of the week. We'll get that to you when we do have it.
Okay.
Um,
And I will throw out, you could be right, I will throw out another reason why 72 did not. So we had 51, but also that was the first 2 weeks of school, and administrators are extremely busy during those 2 weeks. And they didn't feel like that was at the top of their list
yeah,
of
they're-
certain
I mean,
things.
They're definitely busy.
I'm
I agree.
hoping that 9 weeks in, that they take the time to fill out the survey. But
I'll just one follow-up there, Mr. Keene, about the policing. I don't look at it as policing the contract.
Okay.
Our vision is we'd like to establish a partnership with a
Right.
custodial company to do our services, whether that's SSC or someone else, and really do it right. I mean, there are examples around the country where there are long-standing partnerships between a custodial vendor and a school district. And I'd like to see Hamilton County be one of those. And I think once we get to a place with a vendor and get some systems in place on our end, they get to know us, we get to know them, then I think these laps in services will be fewer farther in between, and we'll get into a system and a rhythm where we're feeling like it's working.
Right. And I will say, when we added Brandon Allen to the bus process and that, it made a huge difference too. So, I mean, sometimes you do that and it helps out. So, we do have a couple more. So, Ms. Schaefer, if you want to go ahead, and then we'll wrap it up.
I just want to make sure I understand kind of a plan that we would contract with this third-party consultant for a year while we extend for a year. So they are our eyes and ears to help us make a better informed decision and potentially help us in this relationship.
Yeah, I mean, they would be bringing a level of expertise into the picture, which would certainly be a bonus and a great help for us, and hopefully for our vendor. We'll begin talking to SSC about this extension. Now, if they're not willing to work with us, then that leaves us one other decision. But what we would like to do is involve, the support of a third-party vendor, even in that extension discussion, to help provide us some guidance on how that should look from our end.
Thank you.
And then we'll come to the November meeting, and we can communicate.
What'd you say the cost was?
With that support.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a full package that would involve, you know, the bid, the RFP, the whole process involved in that from start to finish with the monitoring piece. It's in $50,000-ish. I don't have that exact number. But for their lower tier and greater, I mean, they'll provide a full-time on-site person to manage a contract, but that's way out of our price range. But would be 50,000 or less is what we're looking at. And for there are certain pieces, they have monitoring tools that are certainly not an exorbitant amount of dollars that we would find useful.
So 50,000 compared to a 10 to 20% increase. It buys us a year of informed decision-making.
Well, we'll still have an increase you're right, we'll have the extension of the 2% plus a, you know, $30,000 to $50,000 investment in getting this expertise in to help guide the process. And then if it doesn't, you know, if we're here next year and still not happy, we've got a lot of information and we'll be ready to do it the way it should be done. Of course, we want, you know, the way y'all want it done, obviously, is what we want to do.
Thank you, Dr. Sharp.
Yes, sir.
All right, we'll move on to the facilities recap with Dr. Robinson.
Mr. King, I just put a kind of a bow on that and say, we will plan, I don't think that this would require a board vote to extend the contract, but just for transparency's sake, unless something drastically changes, we will put this on the work session agenda for November, just so it's at a public meeting and we can say we're extending this contract by a year. So,
Right,
I
but
want to make sure we're on the same page.
if we were to go to an RFP,
Then we
then
would
that
have to
would be
vote
the
on
board,
it.
right?
Yeah.
So, right.
Okay, so you've got a number of things here in front of you that want to make sure that we go through and make sure that you've got them. So I'm going to hold them up, and if you notice at the bottom, they're actually numbered because we've got 60 pages. That way, if you're referencing something, you can call out the page number that we're referencing. But the first thing that you're looking at is the facilities plan that was approved by the previous board in January of this year. I'm going to point out really two things about the way that this was approved, and existing board or board members that were here in January, correct me or chime in if it's something that you think is different. These were voted on or they're approved and they were voted on. So these are set, right? So that's number one. Number two, in January when these were voted on, the order was important because at that point we did not know how much was coming out in the bond issue. And so the intent of the board was not so much like the order of the projects, but the funding of the projects, right? That number one is funded, want to make sure number two is funded all the way down. Thrasher and Gateway were kind of like, we know that we're going to need to do something with them. If we've got money left over, those are the projects. And in that order, Thrasher, Cigna.
Yes.
Thrasher is probably more pressing than Cigna at this point. So two things about that. You saw Mr. Connors sent the backup to the first vote about Gateway. What this backup was is the way the board voted on number one is that CCA would go to Gateway assuming that the things in this backup are true, meaning that their facilities are as good as or better than what they currently have. If we can't do that, then it was the board's opinion that CCA would not go, right? And so that is true about this document. I want to stop right there just to see if there's anything board members that were here in January would add to that or clarify, or any questions just about how this was voted on. Okay. So, second things, behind your document, and I'll run through some of these. I'm sorry, I should have gone to this one first. We put this bond issue in here because there's been a lot of questions about it, because the numbers don't match our numbers, right? These are both estimates. The numbers that we voted on were, Justin Wood and his team helped us put these numbers together, and they were our best estimates. What county mayor put out, as part of the bond issue with these numbers is what I would equate to when you go to get a loan to build a house. The builder or the bank wants to know that you're spending the money on building a house and not going to buy a car, right? So this is out of county government's office, an estimate on the dollars that would be spent on these projects, nothing more. Neither one of these are actually set, right? They're estimates, okay? So what you have behind that are a number of reports, and we went into an agreement with two different groups, Lewis Group out of Knoxville and Matthew Twitchell here in Chattanooga, to look at these projects and to put better numbers on what these projects would take, right? And so you have those reports. You have a report for every project 1 through 5 except for Clifton Hills.
That's what I was wondering why it's missing.
Clifton Hills is, as we knew all along, is the most complicated project. We spoke to the Lewis Group about an hour and a half before we came in here. They're expecting it to be ready in about 2 weeks. Still looking at the option of renovating existing space and adding on to that building to replace all the portables. It is a tight site. It is a complicated site, and it's going to take a minute. So that's why Clifton Hills isn't there. But all the other ones have a report that give us better, more firm numbers in those reports to help us make decisions moving forward. Justin, I'm going to stop right there. Anything you would add?
No, just to add on the Clifton Hills, just the site constraints, and the big thing is the floodplain issue. So I think that's the constructability, the phasing. We've got existing portables where we want to be. So working out the phasing, again, the floodplain issues is what they're working on now.
But for Ms. Black's concern, I know the plan is still to remove all the portables in this.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On page 12, Justin Witt, on the DuPont Elementary, and I see a number for total hard cost. You see that number, 45 million?
Yes, sir.
And then total soft cost, 4 million. So really the cost of that project then is 49 million. Am I saying that right?
That's correct. And actually, yeah, I think 51 is what we added up. Again, I would say even those, all these are estimates, I would say. And I would also point out that the county did add a $10 to $20 million school contingency for all the projects that they have in their bond fund. So I think there's still some moving parts there. This is not a bid. This is an
I understand
architect's
that, but at
best
no
guess.
point have we estimated that job to be 50 million.
We
Either here or here. Right?
Well, we put 35 to 40. I think what this helps us do is, and number one, thing that I would also add is what we have here, what they're putting here is actually a little bit bigger of a school than what we talked about in January, which we may need for growth down the road. So there's more students on it, but that, again, is a pretty complicated site. But here's why we did these reports, right? We don't want to run into a timer issue where, we said it's
I
going to
get
be
that.
50, and then we get an architect, go through a bid, and it ends up being 75. So these give us really pretty solid numbers for right now about what we could expect to spend.
We'd have to start But we'd have to start now though with these projects, right? So that we don't.
Right.
That's right.
Tucker got the checkbook, he can just run the check.
So to your point, order does matter still.
Yeah,
Because if things run over, it, like, money can run out.
It does the way you currently voted, right? But it matters there because the way you currently voted, you notice on the Gateway report, if we are planning on moving CCA to Gateway with all the things that we said we would do, that project comes out to roughly $83 million.
I didn't see that in here.
Is it at the end?
Yeah.
It's the first. Yeah, it's the first.
Show me, what page?
I think it's page 50.
Yeah, 50?
Nope.
No, it's page 48.
I've got page 50, 82 million.
You see there, or
Yeah,
Scenario,
sorry. You're right.
scenario 3.
So I'm looking at 48, and I
No,
don't see-
sorry, look at page 50, I was wrong.
Okay.
50 has 82.
Scenario 3.
don't run out of money.
82. Okay.
So that 82 is to put in the future ready and move CCA.
Right, so it doesn't actually, because
Right.
this is just talking about CCA, because that's what we passed in January.
Right.
It's.
No,
kind of-
this, remember what we passed in January, it was the combined, had a CTE pathway under CCA, right? That's kind of what we kind of put the placeholder
That's
of.
part of it.
Yeah, yeah, so the 83 includes that.
Okay, so it's 2 schools now, so, because I just,
No,
it's.
no.
I mean, kind of, well, I'm just,
No.
it's,
It's the two documents that you sent is
Mhm.
what it is.
okay, we're already talking about how we all knew that these things were gonna be a little more expensive, except for one that we're gonna talk about that is way too expensive. So, is that what I'm hearing? Like,
No,
other things are fine to be a little more expensive. We don't need to bat an eye at that.
yeah. No, what I would say, and you and I have talked about this, and I would say it publicly, is my recommendation, well, I see 83 million that we're gonna say we're gonna spend at least that, because this doesn't have what Mr. Smith pointed out, the soft cost of like furniture, and it's gonna be even more than the 82.3 that's there.
Well, what do we have to do to get one of these for the first priority?
What do
One
you
of the,
mean?
one of the full look-throughs. If you're saying that this one has soft costs and we really have a better idea, why didn't we do one of these for our number 1 priority?
It is. I mean, if you go through this talks about all the struggles and the challenges. I think it's actually a more in-depth report than
This is?
some of the other ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few different scenarios for it.
Well, and then, okay.
It starts on,
Well, I'm sure we're gonna get to that, then I'm already a little misunderstanding then, because, we're talking already about some of them, oh yeah, we're gonna wildly over, but this one that's also over is bad. So anyway, we're talking about how we might need a bigger school. We specifically in all of our meetings promised these parents that we would not make a quote mega school for them, that we would make
Yeah.
a school that had the right amount of people. I wanna just bring up again that 20-day totals from last year, 23-24. If you take the 5 schools we're talking about combining, which are Alpine Crest Elementary, Rivermont, Red Bank Elementary, Hickson, and DuPont, all would have students that would go to, would be spread over 3 schools, Hickson Elementary, Red Bank Elementary, and DuPont. If you take their MGT capacities, which is a total of 1,526 students, and add in those 5 schools worth of students, we now have 320 students that we don't have a place for. We're at capacity, over capacity. So if we're talking about already going over budget to build a school that we promised parents we didn't want them to have in a mega school, this light is the smallest of the red flags I'm looking at right now.
Yeah. So, be clear, we haven't changed anything about what we said earlier in terms of where we want elementary schools to be. There is space at Red Bank Elementary, there is space at Hickson, and when you look at the capacity for DuPont, DuPont's capacity is on MGT, if I don't have it in front of me, I would say it's.
I do. It's 351.
Yeah, so this school is gonna have a much larger capacity than 351.
So at baseline, it has to have 375.
Yeah, we're gonna build what we talked about is up to 800 kids.
If it has 375 students, then all three of the schools are totally at capacity. We can't add another student at all.
It's not gonna have three, that's what I'm saying, it's, the capacity is gonna be 800, not 375.
I mean, I'm sorry, not 375, 675.
The
You have to
capacity of
add, you have to
DuPont
add
is-
350 plus the students that don't have a home, which is 320, which still means that the other schools are at capacity.
I don't have this math in front of me, we went through this.
I'll share it with you if you want.
But we
It's-
went through this, the entirety of this conversation leading up to January, and the numbers that we have work. I think your question is, what's the difference between something that we said would be 50 million, that's now 82, something that we said, would be, up to 40 and it's 50? There's a pretty significant difference between.
Not for the amount of students that it's helping. So, I mean, just to put the numbers in front of you real quick. So Red Bank Elementary, 702 students. That's how many its full capacity is. Hickson Elementary, without changing, is 473. Assume that they both go to full capacity. That means that DuPont will have to have at least 675 students, and then they are full. Well, I'm sorry, if we make them an 800 student school, which is a little bit more than we said, but if we make that an 800 student school, that still means we have about 100 seats for education for elementary students throughout the entirety now of District 6 and up into my counterpart Chair Smith's zone in 3. Now, if we go into Middle Valley a little bit, but still there's going to be a lot more than 100 elementary students to talk about in the next 5
I'll go
years.
back and look at the numbers again. I wasn't prepared to go back through and have this conversation again about numbers at those schools because we talked about this extensively leading up to January.
We never got a final, I've brought that up and up and up.
And I answered it.
And you keep saying that we're gonna zone them out, but where, how,
Yeah.
what, like, I'm showing the numbers, and this is the thing that every parent says, we don't want a mega school, we don't want it to be too big. And we're already talking about how we're gonna make it bigger than we told them we were gonna
No, we're
make
not.
it.
We said
You just
six- go
said
back.
that this
We
thing, it
said-
may have a bigger school.
It will, but we've said all along, 600 to 800 kids. Like we want elementary schools, 600 to 800 kids. We've been consistent in that. So that's what we're still saying. I'll go back and look at the numbers. Again, I wasn't prepared to get into those details, but the space is there, right? And I'll go back and look at it.
You
I
keep
think-
saying right, but I don't agree with you.
So this conversation you guys are gonna have a little bit. I have a question to ask though that ties into this. So we are gonna involve Red Bank Elementary, we are gonna involve Hickson Elementary. There's nothing in any of the proposals that shows any money going toward either of these schools for any renovation.
Remember, this is the bond issue for capital. This isn't deferred maintenance. So the 60 million that came
So
from deferred maintenance.
that's
the
what I
growth
was wondering.
support
So that'll
operates there.
cover that. All right, that's what I needed to know. All right. So Clifton Hills, no paperwork in here, but plan is still to build, still to remove portables, possibly not build as large as what
Well,
the intention was, but,
So addition to the existing building and renovation.
right,
Yep.
okay. So we have two different proposals on Soddy Daisy Middle School. One that shows it on its own property and one that shows it at the high school. You wanna, I know you were gonna talk to us about that, Justin.
So on Saudi, I believe we are recommending the renovation and addition to the existing Saudi Middle School.
Which is that's what is approved right now. So if you wanted to
Right.
change that, you would have to revote.
That's
This
what
is
we,
what-
go ahead, Chris.
But this is, so going back and just, people gonna be like, wow, she said that, but just going back. I know we have new board, but just in respect to the board member that was here before and all the discussion that we had there, that was, and I think Mr. Slater would, support this, because he was a part of that community that time that was talking to Rhonda. I think we have to really consider that because, I mean, she took comment after comment, conversation after conversation. They had conversation after conversation, well, and we had to hear all of that
No, that's.
for a long time. And I think we should, I mean, I do think there's value in that. So I think before we talk, I don't know, I think for me, and I would hope this will happen when I'm not here, but I think for me, I think we should defer to Mr. Slater to see what his thoughts are on that, if he feels there should be some type of change, or is he in agreement with what we already, I mean, is he in agreement to support, you know what I'm saying? I think,
Well,
I don't know what I'm saying. I think the offer to change anything should come from District 1. Because, once again,
that's what he's saying.
Yeah.
He's
Right.
saying he recommends doing
Yeah,
what we
to-
say. Isn't
What
that what
we-
you-
Right.
Which
what
was
you
what
said?
Rhonda had asked.
yeah.
Go
but he-
ahead.
I mean, 'cause
Steve, you're on the,
he was
you're
saying
on
he
the,
should be, and I'm like,
Okay,
you're on the board here.
I don't even
Larry,
know
follow.
why the 6 through 12 is even being considered, because if you ask the people in District 1, it's 95% plus they want the school where it sits. And the preliminary drawings that we've seen, I think look great. What we might want to do is make the school a little bigger. Instead of, what was it, for 605 students. We might want to go a little bigger. Soddy Daisy and Sale Creek are the two places that's going to be growing like crazy in the next 5 to 10 years. And we don't want to be going through this again 7 or 8 years from now and all the prices are doubled. I think that would be crazy.
And just to clarify, and this is a great example of engaging these architects and visiting the site. So the initial thought was a demolition of the existing, completely demolition. So after reviewing the existing school, we just put a $1 million roof, new windows, renovated it. The architect did a site visit, and this plan is actually demolition of a portion of the building, but a renovation and addition. So I just want to clarify that. It's
Yeah,
not a complete
I've been
tear
up
down.
there and gone over the whole thing with
Right.
the principal and the assistant principal, and they're in full agreement.
Right.
One thing that the principal would like is to have the offices in the new portion and not where it currently is. But I told him I didn't know if we could see that happening or not. But and I understand he wanted to be closer to the kids. But from reality's sake, it's probably going to, money-wise, it's probably going to stay where it is and renovate all that.
Right.
Keep the cafeteria, keep the gym, keep the library and the offices, renovate those, and then build the L-shaped 2-story. But I'm telling you,
What page is that on?
It's in the first page, it's in the first, it's right here.
starts on page 14, I think.
So I have a question for Mr. Slater, or Robert, them, y'all. So his suggestion of moving the offices into the new build, would that harden the entrance there, based off of what the current, we've talked about that before with security pieces, like how some of the buildings were, the older buildings, we were having to do things to harden the entrances. So I can't
we'll get into
recall what
that.
their interest-
Yeah, we'll get into that. I mean, that's step one is
Okay.
programming, which I'm going to lead into another topic. But yeah, step one's programming. So sizing the school, looking at office spaces, schematic designs. We can get into that. But to answer your question, Ms. Jones, it does have a hardened entrance. It's got, I think it has actually I'll call it a teller window outside. So that's something that if we need to look at improving. With new construction, we could definitely do that.
Have you looked at the second entrance coming in from Card Road?
Not yet.
Okay, because I used to ride my bike. I know the road is there. Rode
Yeah.
my bike on that road.
So that cost, I hope I'm looking at this right, 25 million, almost 26. Am I looking at that right?
It says 30 to 50 now.
Where you say, I
Well,
don't see that. Where you see
No,
that?
talking
on,
about right here.
on this right here.
You guys had,
So, yes.
we originally had 30 to 50 or 26 to 30.
Okay.
No.
So there is.
I think that's low, but okay.
Yeah, but there is a little room to play. Mr. Gruen?
Thank you, Mr.
26,
Chair.
I think.
I'm having a hard time finding the size of the Soddy Daisy Middle School recommended addition. Is it 26, 28? What is it?
Dr. Robertson?
About 140,000 square feet. So you add up
Yeah,
the-
go ahead, I'm just.
Do you have a capacity chart that you can send?
Yeah.
It should be in the first email that we got from Robert. It's part of the GT report.
I think,
It's there.
Mr. Groan, on page 26, you probably got the best. It's hard to read, but it shows you like at the middle school side, what the new square footage would be. And that's probably your
No,
best. if
thank you.
You're not seeing it in the narrative at the front.
So on that.
So it would be 40,000, almost 39,000 square feet.
Yes, sir. And again, as Mr. Wood said earlier, these are preliminary, this isn't an actual drawing.
I know you said you didn't have numbers, but for Soddy Daisy Middle School, what is the current capacity and the current enrollment at the site now? Here it is, 5.
Enrollment's
Existing is
just over 400. I'll have to pull up the.
488.
488 is current enrollment, so we're at 75% capacity.
capacity. 456 is today the enrollment.
So what's the current size? What's the size of the existing middle school in square feet?
I don't know that.
I think this is going to be the first of several meetings.
Well, so you say first of several. I think we've got to talk a little bit about process and how this goes. We're doing a lot of pre-planning here, getting ready. Justin, will you go to those last two documents and talk through like how we've done this in the past in terms of selecting architect and then what we're asking?
Well, before we do that, could we hit the last one, Brainerd Dalewood, and then we covered all of them, and then
Sure.
we can
Oh,
finish with
my
that.
main question was, Justin, when you said remodel at Clifton Hills, remodel the original building and add an addition, what are we talking about? I know the report is to come, but, what was the initial conversation? How many square feet of addition are we talking about at Clifton Hills?
I think you're probably 30,000 square feet of addition, enough to take care of the portables and have a little bit of breathing room. So, and my thoughts are, and that's what I'm waiting for the report. I'm hopefully that we have enough room out of the floodplain. I'm thinking in the front of the building and in the rear of the building where the portables are. So a phased project to where you build one section, you move kids out of portables, you move those portables, build the second phase behind the building, and then part of that construction would be a renovation of the existing building.
Yeah, because the floodplain doesn't go, if you're looking at the site, the floodplain doesn't go all the way up to the upper left. It hits about the middle of the property and cuts across to the right and gets smaller as it goes to the right.
If you notice I think it's the cafeteria is actually built, it's actually elevated. I would say 2 feet, 2 or 3 feet below that level is FEMA elevation floodplain. So that's the big question is, do you bring additional dirt for fill? Do you build, do you column, basically a second story that's unused underneath, similar to the cafeteria? So I think that's a lot of the questions that they're working through right now.
Will that be included in their report that we
Yes,
should get
sir.
in a couple of weeks?
Yes.
Okay, and in terms of, I'll look at numbers in terms of history of our enrollment there, over the last, say, 5 or 6 years, and see where we are, and if we're showing growth, whatever percentage that might be, I think that should be, if we have historical figures on growth over, say, a 5-year period, then I think we ought to be looking at adding that current percent in growth to any addition that might be added onto the school.
And I think that's a big question is, do you have room for that size addition?
Hopefully this report will shed light on that.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You want to address Brainerd Delwood real quick, and then we'll go into the process that we face.
You've got, obviously a similar report, Brainerd, Delwood. Remember the recommendation there is a renovation existing site, addition of some middle school capacity to make it a 6 through 12. The cost there is about 34 million, and so that's one that there seemed to be universal agreement on when we went through this in January.
Any questions on Brainerd Delwood?
I hate to regress, but I want to go back, if I may, to this document, bond issue. I don't understand down at the bottom, you've got 1 asterisk, 2 asterisk, 3 asterisk, 4 asterisk. See what I'm talking about there? And I only see, under Gateway, I see 2 asterisks, which says not including 2 million in state funding. And then I see the 3 asterisk under recreation investment, hotel motel tax, right? Am I good so far?
Yes, sir.
All right, and then I see 4 asterisks funded by wastewater.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So my question is, if they're particularly the recreation and wastewater, if it's funded through hotel motel tax and if it's funded through wastewater, why is it being taken out of this bond?
It's not. It's included in this bond. So this bond includes more than just the school system bond. And Deputy Mayor's here. I don't know if you would be able to add anything to that or not, but the bond issue is bigger than just the school
Okay,
system.
all right,
So
okay, all right, all right.
my
all right.
understanding, WWTA is paying for that portion of it so that they can do some upgrades there. The 2 million from the state was included in the state budget last year to go to put Career Technical Education at Gateway. And then the hotel motel is simply for those recreation investments.
And we got, if I'm not mistaken, we got a better rate because we had more money invested into the bond than if we would have gone without the water waste and that. By joining with them, it gave us a better interest rate.
Well, it gave them a
Right.
better interest
Right.
rate.
Yeah, true.
And then one other thing, and I'll hush, whatever we decide here, it's still gotta be approved down at the courthouse. So whatever we decide really don't matter. We're making a suggestion.
Well, yes, but we've worked pretty close with county commission on these projects, and unless we just go crazy off base, then I think we should be good. I do think, and when we get there, we need to have further conversation about Gateway, because I do think there were some stumbling blocks there. When I talk about my apprehension with, you know, the 82 million for a singular project, I think there's gonna be apprehension at the county commission for that as well, my opinion. Before we, because I think we need to talk more specifically about Gateway, but I think it's important for new board members, for Justin Witt to talk about what this process actually looks like. And then also a recommendation to do something outside of what we typically have done with these.
So, you know, a lot of talk has been pricing and the market, and I think that's a reason for a conversation that we're leading into on possibly another, a school construction delivery method. So, if you turn to page 59, this is our current method. And a lot of you may know this, but I realize we do have some new board members, so this will be good for everybody to hear. Page 59. So we do have a MOU, current MOU with the county, and we use the traditional, it's called design, bid, build, construction process. So, step one is a RFP with architect selection. And I'm not gonna read all of these, but basically it's a committee. Committee makes a selection of 3 architects that's sent to the board and the county commission for approval. That has, so going back to Rivermont and DuPont School, it is actually out for RFPs. We have received, I believe, 9 architectural firms that have responded. So on this, we are in step, we would be on step 1B of this process. So the committee will shortlist to 5 and to interview, and then make those selections to go to the county and the commissioner, or the county commission and the school board eventually for
What's
approval.
what's the timeline on that? When?
We've received the architectural RFPs, and we're waiting to put a committee together. So
Just to think, for the newer board members, can you talk about the formation of the committee, who typically is included there?
So the formation of the committee, I did not bring that MOU, but it's the chairman, member at large, which you've appointed, me, county engineer, so the wording in the MOU is changed a little bit. So Mike Kirk, Todd Lehman, me, you, and a member at large will be the committee
For all of them?
for that particular school.
Oh, because that's
So the only, that would be
That's how I was
the,
trying to get to, so
yeah.
they understand it is the board member for that district,
That's right.
a committee member at large.
Who was the first
Correct.
name you gave?
So that's what
Todd
I'm
Lehman, county engineer,
saying. I was saying
and Mike
something else.
Kirk is the facilities manager
Mike
for
Kirk.
Hamilton, yeah. for Hamilton
And
County.
Chair, since we're
That's what, I mean, I understood what you said, I just wanted to make sure, you know, I was kinda like board member, community member, but you got it, that's what.
Can I, since we're asking a couple questions for, not for the new board members, for an old board member, why are we a couple of steps in on this for number 4?
That was my question.
When we-
Why'd we jump ahead of Sunny Days?
Yeah, we don't
I
even
thought
have
that
a,
would
keep-
like, we don't even have a plan for Clifton Hills in this packet, and
If
we're already on
you'll-
step 3 for,
If you'll let him finish, we're.
everybody else
fine
asking
to-
questions. I'm sorry for getting jumped on.
You should call me before this meeting.
It's gonna be fine.
I didn't know we were 3 steps into
If you'll let us explain,
All
we're
right.
trying
I'll
to
let
do
you.
this
So, Mr. Witt, go ahead and.
expeditiously.
And again, my point on the end of this, delivery method is, it is a cleaner project. It's an elementary school, so that's why our traditional method seemed to lend itself well. So, design phase, we work with the architect for programming, SD, schematic design, design development, construction documents. And at that point, you know, we don't have numbers, it's out for bid. So we work, it's a lot of HCDE architect relationship, building budgets, where I want you to remember that when we move to this next second option. So then we move to the bidding phase, out for bid. Hamilton County actually drives the bidding phase. All the funds are in Hamilton County on this delivery method. the bids are received and the lowest and best bid is submitted to the county commission and the school board for approval. If approved, we moved into the construction phase. The contract is jointly signed by the Hamilton County and HCDE. Again, everything in this process is driven from the county side as far as purchase orders, notice to proceed. The invoices go through our office, but are eventually paid directly by the county. So remember that portion as well. And then closeout. So closeout is consent of surety for final payment, release of retainage, O&Ms, warranty, that whole process. So the second option, a proposed second option, is CMAR, a construction manager at risk. So the major difference here, so this step one, the architect selection is number one again. Same process, similar process, but in this process, the major difference with CMAR is the funding, and Mary Ellen's here for any financial questions, but still digging into the details on funding. So CMAR cannot go through Hamilton County directly. So we're gonna drive the architect selection process, the RFP process, and this is where it gets different. So soon after architect is selected, early as schematic design, we wanna bring in a CMAR, which is a construction manager at risk. And this is the major benefit and difference is you'll bring a CMAR in early to help with the design. So you have a professional construction manager working hand in hand with architect. The CMAR will be similar to the RFP with the architect. So it is definitely quality driven. It's not low bid. It'll have two phases. You'll have a pre-construction phase and a construction services phase in the CMAR contract. Again, that contract will be directly with Hamilton County Schools. Number three, you can circle that, and again, you'll have questions, please call me, we can talk about this. 3 is the major benefit, in my opinion, of a CMAR. So in pre-construction and design, they're working with architect, they're looking at value engineering, they're looking at constructability, and they're also, as soon as schematic design, that is a milestone of a cost estimate. So at that point, all earliest construction, schematic design, hey, are we on the right track? Is our square footage off? Are there places where we can save money? You move forward to design development, a little more detailed. Some of that blockings actually has some dimensions on it. Another estimate, another constructability, another value engineering options. 50% construction development, same process, another pricing, and then at finally 100% construction documents. One last estimate, and this is where the CMAR feels comfortable. I think we're on the right track. We're within our budget. The CMAR will drive and solicit bids to subcontractors, and the subcontractors will be the major trades. So electrical, masonry, concrete. All of the subcontracts will be publicly advertised. All the bids will go through the construction manager. We'll have a chance to review those. And this whole pre-construction phase, that phase 1, the major deliverable is what's called a GMP, a guaranteed maximum price. So they collect all the subcontractors. Everyone has a good scope of work. Everyone understands the project. The CMAR produces a GMP, which they will submit to us, guaranteed maximum price. All the time knowing what our budget is. We approve the GMP, and that GMP becomes an amendment to that existing contract as a phase 2 construction services. From this point, it's basically the same process. Again, the major benefit for CMAR would be phase construction, renovation to existing buildings, complex projects, tight scheduled projects. So there's pros and cons to both. I think, again, the major pro for construction manager at risk is it's not bid day on January 1st at 2 o'clock, and that's the first time you're seeing a number, and then you're in panic mode because we're over budget, or we didn't have a chance to value engineer, or I'm worried that we don't have qualified contractors that are in the bid market right now. So again, this is something that I would at least like to present maybe in the November board meeting if we can put something together, but it would another MOU that would be with the county and the school board. But I would like to bring that to you guys to at least have a secondary option. This Walker County uses CMAR, Catoosa County uses CMAR, UTC, UTK, uses a blend of it, but it's not new, I guess is what I'm saying.
Similar process also Bradley County, not
Bradley
exactly
County.
similar to what they did at the Pi Center. So back to the original question of why, we were talking about a bid for is we feel like this process fits really well for Gateway, for Soddy Daisy Middle, and for Brigham. And so if we bring this to you guys in November, we would like to use this project on those projects and get those going.
All right, we've got a bunch of questions, so, Ms. Black.
I don't know if it was a conversation with you or someone. I'm familiar with the difference between like CMAR and what we've previously done. The way I see benefit in layman's terms is, and the way I understand it, and I don't want to offend any architects out there, architects have a vision and they draw things that they like to see, but they don't necessarily understand the cost of it when the people are building, and having a CMAR working with the architect being more realistic about our budget and what actually should be going into and what we actually should be spending money on within these buildings, I think is a nice balance, especially having a contract directly with that person. So they're advocating for what we really want to see. And instead of, a lot of times these projects get over budget. And it could be just a simple change in design that could save us a lot of money. And that's the value in employing this person. And I just want to kind of make that clear for those who may not. That's the way I see it, like in layman's terms.
Exactly, and with this, basically, and they're basically an extension of our office too. I mean, they're a contractor, owner's rep. They're working for us.
Right.
So it's definitely more of to compare the two, I would say this is more of a team effort versus a traditional design bid build.
And like you said, we're not surprised at the end. We have somebody at the table the entire time,
Right.
advocating for, what's best for us as the customer.
Right.
All right, Mr. Conner?
Okay, so I will, again, say that too. We've had lots of conversations. We've walked through probably 10 or 15 different schools looking at different ways to do things in other schools. And it made me think of my papaw when you were talking about it. Like you draw the drawing, but when you're out there, you go, well, I actually need a different log kind of thing. It's somebody that's throughout the process. So I agree with that completely. I am going to have to push back that even if we are adopting a new method, we haven't yet. And so it's not anybody's choice to jump Soddy Daisy getting a middle school just because it's easy and you think we may pass something next month. No, but and I'm not saying anybody's in the wrong other than that action is wrong. That action is not the will of the board. The will of the board is what was voted on, and it's in 85 pages in front of me. Right. There's not a plan at all for Clifton Hills, which is the number 2 site. And then if we, again, we're jumping things, but if we want to come full circle back to our plans for Gateway, we have, according to this, which you'll have to forgive me, it was buried a little bit down. I did not see it. We got this at the end of fall break, so I'm sorry for not seeing all of them listed at the end. But this is the first time that they've been public, that there's been any other plans other than what we voted on to do for the Gateway building. And all of them, except for one, include utilizing the whole building. And so I just want to be really, really, really crystal clear with the general public that of these 4 ideas and of what the board in January voted to be the #1 priority for this entire board, for the school system, we only have 1 that actually utilizes the very, very expensive building that we bought. All the rest of them keep saying minimal work and vacant space up top. Minimal work for a technical school in the first level, minimal work requirement, a school with no athletic programs, which I can read between the lines since there's only one of those in our system to know which one that is, but it's not listed here. And then finally, the one that has, yes, an over budget of what we, again, were estimates, but if I'm looking at this correctly, every one of them to a percentage of the students they're going to serve is over what we estimated. And we're not even totally certain that that's the final and end all. Like, we haven't actually drawn up a real plan. So that number could be overestimated. But we're also talking about a situation where in today's day and age, everybody knows that until you actually put hammer or shovel to ground, however you want to say it, the price just keeps going up. Like everything is more expensive from the time you shovel the first shovel of dirt till you actually get done. Tyner was exactly the same way. It is that way in the modern world. So I'm just, again, I come back to being rather impressed that we were shaking off an $11 million increase over our high estimate for one project that currently we're talking about 800 students now is what we're saying the number would serve potentially. But we also have a school that went over on the estimated budget, we're saying by $20 million, that currently has 800 students at it. So and we're not even talking about what we would add in the technical school. So if we're talking about percentage of students served and the money that we're willing to spend, and based on what the school board voted on as its #1 priority, and the fact that we've got to answer to our taxpayers as to why we're not using a building that we plan to use that the board voted on in some other way, then there's a lot of question marks that people keep asking me about that I have no idea and no answer to. And I've even been interviewed by the newspaper and I said, look, I can't answer that question because I don't know why you're asking me something's changed from what's been talked about in open meetings. Apparently there's a whole new idea that everybody knows about except for me because I can't know about it because I haven't heard about it in an open meeting. So I've just so many question marks as to why we're moving so quickly in a different direction than what we voted on, and how we're shrugging off like, yeah, well, that one's about 12 million over, but we'll forget about that because it's #4. We've already started on it. But about this #1 one, that is way too expensive. I don't really have an answer because there's so many questions that there's about 1,000 answers that aren't there. But that's just a lot to think about. So I'll just leave that in front of everybody.
Let me share, I can answer 2 questions of the 1,000. One, the reason we start on this is if we waited for you guys to approve stuff before we took action, we would never get anything done. We'd be behind, like, it is our job to do the pre-work, just like it is on this architect selection, because it's still got to come to you for approval. But there are steps before that it would be unreasonable for us not to get started on, right? So to say that we've jumped ahead of a process is not true. We've started a process that eventually is going to require board approval, right? Committee hasn't even voted on, which architect to send to county mayor and to myself to bring to you guys. So we're doing the pre-work that then comes to you and allows you to vote on it as a board. To the second question in terms of what's happening. What's happening right now is this. This is what the board approved in January. There's no other approved plan, right? When we talk about numbers, what the board's got to decide is at $83 million, is #1 still what you want to do? That's not my decision. It's not the county mayor's decision. It starts with this 11-person board. So that's the question that's in front of this board is, do we want to spend $83 million on this one project, or do we want to shift courses? It's not my decision to make. It's y'all's decision.
The only thing I would respond real quick, just to say back.
No.
Oh, do I not? Do I get to
We've got a couple more already on here first. So, and then I'll bring in back again, Mr. Smith.
Well, and it sounds like that's gonna be a whole nother meeting, and we need to decide just what you just said. I want to go back to what you were talking about, Justin, about the, make sure I get all these initials right.
Acronyms.
The CMAR.
Yeah.
I jotted down a couple of things that I just want to kind of get clarification on. Could that CMAR, could he manage that same person or that same organization that becomes the CMAR? Can they manage more than one project simultaneously?
Yeah, yeah, I think so, but I mean, I would suggest, doing an RFP on each project. Just, you know, the project sizes are different. You have several different qualified CMARs, so I would do each
All right, so-
RFP separately.
Okay, so,
Yeah,
so the short answer is yes, they could.
they could.
Could, is it possible that CMAR gets into a conflict? So, for example, I'm Joe Smith Construction Company, and I become the CMAR of the Gateway project. I want my construction company to also be the contractor for the job.
So I would say, I would lean towards the CMAR will be the GC. So,
So then we already know that then.
correct. So the RFP will be, phase one, again, will be the pre-construction. So we'll have an RFP, multiple CMARs will respond. The phase one pre-construction will be a lump sum price. We will ask for pricing on that. So lump sum price, we'll probably ask for overhead and profit, a percentage. We'll ask what's included in their general conditions. We'll have some pricing, and then the biggest piece is qualifications. What are your past projects? What are your past CMAR projects? So yes, they will be, yes, you're pre-selecting a construction manager.
yeah,
That also, they cannot self-perform any work. All of the subcontracts we will see. So everything's open book, I guess is what I'm saying. There's no, everything we'll see. A good example of a CMAR was the build back at East Brainerd Elementary. So everything, I mean, a pay application is probably 500 pages. Every invoice, everything's marked up based on a pre-selected markup. So it's very open book. Again, I think the benefit is more of a qualification selection process, and then that ability to see your estimate as you progress in design, and you almost back into a number rather than boom on bid day. You have here's your number.
Yeah. Can I just say one other thing, Mr. Chairman? As we're moving down this path, particularly with the DuPont site, and I know Justin and I have talked about this a little bit, right next door to that site is the YMCA, and they're in a capital campaign right now. And there are partnerships all over the country with schools and YMCAs. So I hope we'll have some conversation with the YMCA as they're moving forward with their rebuild, and we're building a new school. What a great time get all those architects and construction people together and see what we can create together.
Yeah.
So, and that probably needs to be done on the front end before we put a shovel in the ground.
Right.
So, just a thought. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Slater?
Yeah, just for clarification, number 2 and number 3 were a tie, and Clifton Hills was alphabetically ahead of Sauter Daisy, so.
Thank you. That's right, Steve. Sporting of you right there.
Absolutely.
Mr. Connor?
Thank you, Chair. To come back and ask the question I was going to after the comments, you still didn't answer as to why we haven't done those steps on 1, 2, or 3. Like you said that it would be against your due diligence to keep working on those, but
So
we-
1 and 3, we're wanting to do this process, this new CMAR process, so it would not, you know, it would be a different step, and we've got an MOU right now with county, it's MOU technical word, but we can't do this. We're gonna have to get y'all to approve it, right? And so that's why we're putting it in front of you now, so that in November we can bring it and say, we wanna be able to do this option, and we wanna start with these projects. right?
And I've already said on record earlier that I think that it's a great thing. Why wasn't it brought to us earlier then? If we had to start on other ones and we knew we couldn't until this, why not go, hey,
Well,
we've already talked to a bunch of you about
Yeah,
this.
we've been working with county government to get to a place like there's questions, I mean, some people are like, you can't do this, you can't, so we're working through the process to make sure legally we can do it. It's a big change because now money's coming to us and we're handling that side of it, right? So we had to make sure legally that we could do it.
And I've heard a lot about it. I like it. I think it's going to be a good thing going forward. I'm still don't like the process that we're doing. I think that it is.
I understand. I guess my frustration is you and I have talked a lot. I've been really open with you about us wanting to move forward. There's nothing that we've talked about tonight that, should have been a surprise, right? I mean,
And
we're
I've
wanting
been-
to move this as fast as we can.
And I've been really open with you
I know
about
you
how I think that we should do things based on transparency and honesty. And
Well, hold on, don't say that, because now you're saying that I'm being dishonest.
I didn't. I think that we as a group are being dishonest if we have already come to the table and have a mindset and a persona of, well, this is way too expensive, but these other ones that are over, we're going to try and talk those down.
That's my job, is to bring recommendations to y'all.
Mhm.
That is my job.
Well, then let me transition that into this. The way that you're saying this is not the way that it should necessarily be looked at. You keep saying this dollar amount for one project, this dollar amount
That
for.
is my
I
opinion.
understand. Let me finish my thought. This dollar amount for one project, but we're not talking about how many students. So the dollar amounts should translate to how many students can be affected by this or helped by this. And just thinking about it for that 81 million for the Gateway project, and assuming that we do have the 150 students of other tracks, part of that, that means that we're already sitting at 900 students that would be affected positively in Hamilton County by this dollar amount. So what I'm saying is, the way that you're saying it's just one project, we need to be sure that we're understanding how many students are involved in it. And I'll just repeat one last time that I think that if we're already working on processes 6 steps ahead for other things, we need to get Clifton Hills, we just push them. I know that it's a hard project, but let's get that one done first, and then we can look at it. Like, that's one of the biggest ones for just the health and safety of our students, having to drag trash cans around and catching water and stuff. Like, let's get a
We've
plan
been-
before we're taking a
yeah,
couple
we've been-
steps on one that
we've
doesn't
been
need it.
pressing them. I don't know if I said it before, but I talked to them about an hour and a half before this meeting. They said it's about 2 weeks, but
Okay.
we knew going into it, it was by far the most complicated project that we've got.
I think
And actually, that project was originally kind of first on the list until we ran into the floodplain issue, and then
It's that, but also remember the recommendation early that came out of the working group that had Mayor Womp was to close Clifton Hills and to move it to additions at East Lake and East Side. We went through the whole process of listening. This board voted to change that, to leave it there, but we left it there knowing, the guy that I talked to today at the Lewis Group kind of laughed and was like, do y'all not have another piece of property right near there? And I was like, yeah, it'd be a lot easier if we did, but it's a hard site and it's a hard project. We're pressing them, they're doing the best they can.
Well, my last thought about that is just, I know that we're trying to move as fast as possible to do the right thing, but it's difficult to hold this meeting without all the information, and that's a big key that we could have had.
all right. So we have Ms. Black and then Mr. Groen, and then I'll close, and I'm going to make a suggestion when I close. So Ms. Black?
I get how we got here,
Go ahead.
as far as got further in the process for the 4th project. Whatever, I'm not gonna beat a dead horse. I don't want to get past this point in the discussion and still not have a plan for Clifton Hills. I don't want us to be looking at numbers and talking about projects and talking about running out of bond money without including Clifton Hills. It makes me really uncomfortable that we're having this meeting and we have 4 plans out of 5 that we thought we were going to have when we're having this discussion. Because as you said, like, this board, through the whole, all of the conversations that we've had at facilities, we've talked about the condition of Clifton Hills. There's 16 portables. It's really hard to guarantee, again, the health and safety of kids. We can't secure a campus that has 16 portables.
Stop, don't,
It
not true.
it is it's incredibly concerning. I just don't want to get past this point and still not have a plan for Clifton Hills, because that's not what was voted on. That's not what this board saw as a need. That's not, and it feels like, I don't want to have gone through the whole process. That I've talked about how incredibly proud I was of the process that we went through of taking the recommendation, the working group plan, and taking it to the community and having a discussion among the elected board members for these schools and coming up with what we thought was best instead of, and how to change that plan. And that plan included closing Clifton Hills, as you say. I don't want to sit here and look at numbers and see how all of these other schools are getting renovated and then at the end be like, oh, we don't have money to do Clifton Hills anymore, and it falling off the priority list. That's not something, it makes me really uncomfortable that we're having this conversation and we're already talking numbers and we're already talking about priorities without having any information on the school in my district. And, you know, I just don't want to get past this point and still not have a plan for Clifton Hills, because it is an incredibly high needs school. The South Chattanooga is the fastest growing area of Hamilton County. We have, you know, our numbers have continued to go up in enrollment. We have families that continue to move there. And it is an incredibly, it's a high needs priority. And the fact that we came here today and we have plans for every other school, that we thought, the first 5 projects that we thought would reasonably be touched by this bond, and not a plan for Clifton Hills, it's upsetting.
Mr. Grum?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the way I see this is that we could have a minimum of 3 projects going on at the same time. This board met, I don't know how many times, to come to the decision that we made. So if you're saying we can't do Gateway because it's too expensive, but the Gateway project really affects 3 different groups of students. Howard, all the new students that would come to this high-tech technical school, and if we're not going to put CCA there, what are we going to do about improving their current facilities? So that is something that I feel is important for us to decide, and the sooner the better. Prior to me coming on the board, and Ms. Black and Mr. Connor and Mr. Keene, the school district, I believe, was saying that we got to have a new Tyner Middle High School. And I think there was actually an estimate of how much it would cost. And I don't know who's responsible for why it didn't take place when it was supposed to, but it ended up costing almost $30 million more than if the county commission would have gotten the funds together and done it. We're facing the same thing now. So my question, again, is what are we going to do at Gateway? What are we going to do for CCA, and what are we gonna do at Clifton Hills? And that needs to be addressed as soon as possible. Because, you know, look, I haven't lived here all my life, I've just been here 17 years, but we got this bond issue that probably should have been done 10 years ago. And I don't know about the rest of this board, but we've done a lot. We've done a tremendous amount of growth. But now it's time to turn what seems to be this deferred maintenance into upgrading these schools and are developing new ones. These things need to happen. And I don't know what kind of pressure we can exert as a board. We all need to be talking to our county commissioners. We need to be talking to the principals. I mean, all of us should be having meetings with the principals that are the ones who are greatly affected by this, the ones that are affected. And let's find out for ourselves what we can do to address this issue before we have the next meeting, which I assume is going to be in 10 to 14 days when we get the Clifton Hills report. Am I correct?
We're at a standstill until we vote. I mean, my recommendations, we need to have something, you know, another meeting before November board meeting, because we're gonna have to vote on something, to get moving.
I'll bring that up
I-
at the
I-
end.
I disagree that, I'll hold it.
All right.
There's a
Well-
lot that's frustrating to me tonight, because when I'm being accused of being dishonest, being accused of not putting Clifton Hills first, when you saw what we went through a year and a half ago to get to this place for Clifton Hills, it's frustrating that because we don't have a report on one school that we said would be the most difficult project. We spoke to the people an hour and a half. I told you that at the beginning. We're not superseding anything. This is a conversation about what the board voted on in January and what do we do with it moving forward. I'm not trying to do anything in the dark, not trying to do anything dishonest. And it's frustrating that those two things came.
So what is your recommendation on what are you
My
asking us
recommendation
or
that-
suggesting,
Yeah.
This,
are you suggesting?
this point, this isn't the
that-
time for that.
Are
I
you
would-
suggesting that we move forward on, Gateway and what's the other one? And Saudi Daisy Middle, and make a recommendation that we approve on those, and as soon as we have the information on Clifton Hills, we jump onto that. So is that your recommendation?
My recommendation to the board is that you need to reconsider what we're doing at Gateway. I would recommend that we look at the option that renovates the first and second level into a CTE, and we would have discussions about what that might look like in terms of, is it similar to Harrison Bay, right? To where multiple schools can have kids coming to that. That option would be somewhere around $15 million. If that is the option the board went with, then Clifton Hills, Saudi Daisy, DuPont Elementary, and Brainerd all have more than enough money to get those projects done. And so we've gotten really far ahead in this process in terms of deferred maintenance and other things. So that's my recommendation, is to consider doing something different at Gateway than we voted on in January, than you voted on in January, which then opens up enough money to finish 2 through 5.
Okay, well, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Chair, and would be interested in any recommendations that this board might want to make tonight.
All right. So, Ms. Schaefer, go ahead and close.
I'm
and
going
then I'll
back to the
finish.
CMAR thing. When I'm looking at what the current process is compared to CMAR, there's some question marks on the CMAR one, county commission approval, question mark. And like the county mayor, superintendent making final selections, all that's taken out. So are we taking the mayor out of the picture?
I think that's part of the discussion is, we mentioned earlier, the way the finances work. We're gonna have to handle the money in some form or fashion. We're gonna have to issue the purchase orders. I'm not sure what that process looks, I'm not there yet, on that process.
I just
That will
wanna,
be, that will be part of the MOU though. We'll have that ironed out.
okay, thank you.
All right, so kind of sum things up. We have 260 million bond money, but of that 260 million, 100 roughly, and this is ballpark, 167 million of it goes toward new and renovating schools. So because 60 million is, I'm looking at the thing, so we're pulling out the 10 million from the wastewater, that we don't get that. We're pulling out the 60 million for capital projects. That doesn't go toward the renovation. And then as we look at what we need, what we've estimated in these, without the Clifton Hills paperwork, so doing ballpark on that, we actually need a minimum of 215 million. So the decision Mr. Groen brought up and Dr. Robertson mentioned was, we're gonna, and Mr. Smith and I have talked about this, we need to have another facility meeting before the November board meeting with the specific intent to discuss the use and funding of the Gateway building. So I'll get with Mr. Smith and Dr. Robertson, and we'll either, Mondays seem to be the best day, so we'll either do it next Monday or we'll do it the Monday after that. But so right now, if these numbers are close, out of that 167 million, the Gateway CCA would take up 83 million of it. That would be about 50% of the funding that we have available for that project, and then the other 84 million going towards number 2 through 5.
Mr. King, I think you maybe didn't add the contingency. It's 187 million.
I did not add that,
Yeah,
so
so
that
it's
that can
187.
be used specifically for renovations and that. All right, so yes, 187 then. I thought that was for already existing buildings that we were going to be using. So, all right. All right. So with that in mind, we adjourn and look for an email from Mr. Doremus on when our next meeting will be.